Hi folks, Richard here again. I actually made this video. I was halfway through it and I got this cat's going to poop on my vegetables, whatever. Anyway, I wanted to make a few comments because I was thinking about the piece I made about Iran, and my view is that we must support the setback, because they're not going to defeat US imperialism, but a setback for US imperialism here, not just because of Iran's defense of its sovereignty, but for American workers, for us and our children, not me, I'm old, to get dragged into more and more of this quagmire that the US Congress and the capitalist class in this country drag us into. No American, not one, should die in this bloody thing. Okay, I wouldn't send my kid for it, I'll tell you that now. But so it's one thing, why I'm making this is that it's one thing to talk about what is and to oppose what is, but what about what can be? And that's a little more complicated. And I remember when I was up in Yorkshire during the miners' strike, there was a huge strike up there, 1984-85. It was unbelievable. I don't want to waste my minutes here with it, but it had a profound effect on me. And I remember at one point going into a working man's club. They had these working man's clubs. I'd not been up to Yorkshire. It's the industrial working class up there. Like you go up to Manchester, or you read Engels's book, The Conditions of the Working Class in England, I think it's called, about the manufacturing in Lancashire, when the cotton that the black people picked and children and workers in Lancashire processed it. So industrial working class up in the north, the mines, the mills, so forth. And so I've made videos about this. I identify with a working class. It's weaker here because in the post-war period, after the Second World War, when the United States, exiting that war, had about 52% of world trade, it was the global leader. And in the post-war era, it laid the groundwork for the American dream, which didn't come to everybody. There's millions it didn't. But certainly if you were a white worker, if you were a union worker, the idea that your wife would have to go to work or what have you, and you needed two paychecks, that was all gone. So that created this consciousness. But so the question is then about what will be. Well, the problem is, if you take me, most of my activity was in the trade union. It's why I so viciously defend it. Now, I'm very critical of the leaders of the trade union movement, just like I'm critical of the leaders of the state of Iran, and I'm critical of the leaders in the United States. But the question is, I defend the union, and without the unions, even with the concessionary class collaborationist leader we have, we'd be in a catastrophic state. All the social legislation you got and we was won in the 1930s through the mass occupations, the strikes, 3 general strikes, the occupation of GM. The head of GM said we'll never have a union here. Well, they got one. They got one. He meant it, but they got one. So what caused that? So those huge struggles on the ground, the working class moving into struggle, beginning to develop, the issue of an independent political party arose, and so forth. That led to the US capitalist class saying we've got to make some concessions here. Same happened in the 50s. The Black Revolt. We used to see it in England, turning dogs, and we pick white people spitting at black people trying to go to school. And this was embarrassing America the world over. And you had the colonial revolution in Africa, the kicking out the British and so forth. And so the US capitalist class says we got to create a layer, we got to create a buffer zone here, we've got to make some concessions. And they tried to develop and have developed a black middle class that can turn around to the black working class and say, work hard, work through the system, look at me. But they got what they did, just like we got what we did, workers in the unions, through the struggle of the blacks, black youth and their allies in the civil rights movement. So the thing is, it's this issue of class. So in Britain growing up, I wasn't political, but I knew the Labour Party was a party for us, and you should vote that way. It was a political party based on the trade union movement, primarily, and it was formed earlier on because the Liberals couldn't bring the goods. And you know, even today, there's still block union votes in it. And don't judge unions by the leadership of the unions. There's 14 million workers in unions. Most workers can bitch about unions all the time, then get in trouble. They say, oh, let me go see my union, because there's nowhere else for us. We don't have our own organizations but those. And so when I'm talking about, it's very difficult to say about what will be. If you take Iran, I oppose American capitalism in Iran. My ally is the Iranian worker. I want to change and get rid of the mullahs too. The US has no problem. The US ruling class has no problem with the mullahs. Look at, they worship, they're friends with the Saudis. They're friends with Netanyahu, a mass murderer and a killer of children. They don't care. The US, it killed 3 million Vietnamese. Did they invade us? Did they threaten us? They bombed Grenada. They invaded Iraq. They spent trillions of our money. You know? So the question is, we don't have anywhere to turn. Most workers in this country is a Democratic Party, but this Democratic Party is a capitalist party. Yes, I always say that the Democratic Party, its left wing was in power during the two greatest upheavals of the American working class, the civil rights movement and the building of the CIO and industrial unionism in the 30s. That's why it's seen as the workers' choice, but it's not. More and more, 100 million don't even vote. You know, so we don't have anywhere to turn. But that's what we have to build, and we have to at least see it in our own consciousness. When somebody used to ask me, are you for or against the death penalty? I said, well, it depends who does the killing and the judging and the hanging. Kissinger never got killed. He's a mass murderer. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, we don't have an organization. We do have trade unions, and they're important. I don't care what some lefts say, that they will play a role in the struggles ahead. I used to think the initial stages of a movement would begin within them, but the right-wing bureaucracy, the class collaborationist bureaucracy, is very tight hold on them, particularly in the building trades and stuff like that. But so when I say I want the defeat of American imperialism in Iran, that will open up, that will undermine American imperialism, will strengthen me as a worker. I just don't have an organization that can go out into Iran or into these, and to speak for me as a working person. The unions I have, but I don't have a political party. The Democrats are not it. So that's a big gap, and it retards this development where working people, plus we have to overcome the post-war era where Americans don't say they're working class even. I'm a middle class. That's what somebody said to me at work when I first came here. He said, don't insult me. I never had aspirations to be middle class. I'm a working person. And of course, there's different grades. Some have earned a lot of money. I'm fairly well off by American workers' standards. So that's the issue. But we have to always see it. That has to be built, and it will be built. But we don't support the Iranian mullahs. We didn't put them in power. The US did. And they'd make a deal with him tomorrow if they'd have gotten more of the loot. The question is building working class communities, working class organizations, a working class political party, and so forth. I hope that sort of clears a few things up, maybe.